Now we have a quorum.
We have a quorum. I'm going to call the Aviation Advisory Board meeting to order for June 4th, 2025. And first order of business is the draft minutes from April 2nd. Are there any changes?
If I had one change. Clancy, somewhere we know that Richard Haig is in charge of the hangout at the spearheading event. He's just a committee member. It's
Okay,
really being spearheaded by the United Way folks.
okay, if you would make that change on the official record. Okay, with that change, I need a motion to accept the minutes.
I move they be
Sarah?
accepted as changed.
Second.
Sarah, second, Ms. Villum.
Okay. And Scott made a change. Yeah.
As corrected. All in favor, say aye. Aye, Carrie? Are you an aye on the minutes?
Aye,
Okay.
sorry, had to come off of mute.
Okay. The next is, agenda items, the City of Lawrence Development. Space overlay, et cetera.
Yeah, we've got Sandy Day from
Sandy?
Planning and Development Services here tonight. I asked Sandy to come because I thought her staff report that was on last week's Planning Commission agenda was just so good that she should share it again with all of you. And I think it's really informative. And I also asked her to briefly speak about Article 7 of the new land development code. This article has been in the code. You may have not ever been familiar with it. It really protects the airport. And so I asked her to talk briefly about it tonight too. So.
Okay, great.
Well, good evening. As got introduced, I'm Sandy Day. I'm one of the land use planners with the city. The project that came across my desk initially was the subdivision for the airport property. And I don't know if you want to pull up the presentation and share the screen. Part of what we do is looking at development for the city, and that includes property that is owned by the city. One of the requirements in the city code is that property must be platted in order to issue the building permit. We as the city follow the same rules, predominantly the same rules as any other developer in the city. So that did lead us down this road of needing to do a subdivision plat for the airport. So that does fall under the city code. It falls specifically under the subdivision regulations, which is a chapter within the city code. The Article 7 piece, this is the presentation from Planning Commission. So Scott kind of sprung this one on me. For the code, the language that is in the updated code is the same language that was previously in the code that we had adopted in 2006. So that still stays the same. What that does, what the language in the overlay district does is we have a base zoning for all properties in the city, and that establishes a list of land uses. An overlay district is just that, it overlays and it floats. It's kind of an imaginary boundary. And then the airport has some very specific zones that are set out that you all are probably more familiar with really than even I am. And I think if you go to the slide I thought I had in here, hang on. And maybe it's in the staff report. But there are a couple of different zones, and they are based on where they're located in relationship to the runways. That's always kind of the baseline that we're using for a lot of that kind of thing. There are runway protection zones at the end of the airport. There's airspace overlay components. I can't even think of all of them that are off the top of my head. And that deals with restricting and limiting building height. All of that follows FAA. It also sets out the regulations that you're kind of passing around there, also sets up what's called the Airport Zoning Commission. And it assigns the Planning Commission to be the Airport Zoning Commission. And what that means is that anytime there's going to be a permit issued that it has to also go to the planning commission to have a review that says, does this proposed building comply with these things? So it's not just done at administrative level, it's done in this public forum piece. And it deals with some pretty specific things in terms of looking at those buildings. So we have taken site plans to the planning commission. We have taken special use permits, and then technically we probably should talk about whether or not building permits themselves need to go to the planning commission. That's always been kind of a weird piece of code. We've asked the consultant to look at that. I think we've asked Garver to look at that. We had no changes to this part of the zoning code when we did the update, either from our consultant or from the airport consultant. So we've let it lie. And so that's the procedure pieces of what we're doing with that code, but really looking particularly at building height in that planning commission role. When they have that, that just puts that in another public review procedure piece. When we have projects that are either on or very near to the airport, staff is coordinating to make sure that this board is advised when those things happen. It's been a little bit since we've had one that's come forward. So that also led us to this discussion about the airport as it exists today. Some of it is platted, some of it is not platted, and some of those plats go back a number of years. The original reason or purpose for platting the airport in the configuration that you see it today was to be able to facilitate conversations with prospective tenants out at the airport on areas they may lease. What we have discovered over time is that these boundary lines that were created, these public streets that were established, we call them paper streets because they're on the plats, but they've never been constructed, except for, I think, Bryant Way, obviously Airport Road. As we have looked at more recent development applications, we're going through these processes and procedures where we have to replat and adjust lines and vacate easement and vacate streets, and it really is very inefficient. It's inefficient for staff, for the city, for the developer, whoever that is going to be.
What slide should I be?
This one is just fine. Because we have the mapping technology that we have today, the need for these lots is really less important than it was when we first started this process. So the proposed application really replats all of the airport property into actually 3 separate lots. And the reason that is because when you create a lot, if you have a street that's bisecting something, that creates a block. So I can't have a lot that jumps a street. I have to have a new lot. So that's why we ended up where we did. The image on the left kind of circles the lower part of the airport property that actually has been platted. What I'm trying to highlight in this slide is the pieces that are actually going to be vacated. So we've got some easements. We've got some public right-of-way that is going to be vacated through this process. And we're going to dissolve those interior lot lines. And so that'll create much more flexibility as we talk to prospective tenants out at the airport. If you want to go
Are those the ones on the right there?
the ones on the right in the blue, that's what it's platted today.
Okay.
And you can see the aerial image. Anything that has that colored background, that is how GIS demarcates a platted property.
Okay.
So anything, the runways, the tarmac up at the north, the properties to the south, they're in the city limits, but they've never been platted.
Yeah, got it.
Okay, so that's what all of that is. The public streets that are being vacated, there is going to be some new dedication of utility easement, both along the highway and along Airport Road. And what that does is that sets aside or reserves that space for utilities to go in. As we have buildings that come out there, if they have to have a utility extended to them, the city will assess whether or not that needs to be a public utility and there's an easement for that, or if it's a service line, then we don't need to dedicate an utility easement. Would you go into the next one, please? So because if you looked at this drawing, the drawing that they sent us, I think it's, I don't know, 9 or 10 pages. Because we're talking about a property that's over 500 acres. So it made sense to be able to try and break this down into bite-sized pieces for me as a reviewer, but also for me to be able to talk to the planning commission and talk to this body about what's happening. So this is the property that the city owns on the south side of the highway. There are 2 lots there because we have a street dividing north and south. And then this is showing where there is regulatory floodplain, and that has an impact if the city ever proposes improvements. Because this is at an end of the runway, it's probably unlikely we would ever see an actual building there, but it's not unreasonable to think that there could be lights or some kind of infrastructure component.
Is this part of the potential runway extension or not? No,
This is south
that's
of
just south.
Yeah, this is south.
Part of the
Yes.
Mountain Hauser lights are
Yeah.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
This is where we cut trees last year to come into compliance with some of the stuff that
Okay.
they had asked us to do.
We're going to go on to the next one. So these are the criteria that staff is charged with reviewing a subdivision for. Does a proposed subdivision or the lots that we are creating, does it meet these very specific criteria? And the one that's highlighted there are variances. When we subdivide property, it's kind of a yes or no ministerial kind of action that we're taking. You either comply with the design standard or you do not. If you comply with everything fully, we can approve the preliminary plat and move on to the next steps of the development process. If you don't, then either we have to revise the drawing or we have to do what's called a variance. So in this particular application, we have a couple of subdivision variances. The airport is a unique property. It's in the city, but it's surrounded by unincorporated area. So we have a number of streets that are adjacent to the airport. You want to go on to the next one? And this is where it gets weird. And if I lose you, stop me and I'll answer the question. Some of these in the city, we call them streets. In the county, they tend to be called roads. That's just the nomenclature. This design standard for county road is a little bit different than the design standard for a city street, depending on what classification of that street. So as we went through the review process, we have about 40 different reviewers that look at these projects. Part of that was the county engineering team, and they commented on behalf of the township that they would like to see the abutting county roads meet the minimum right-of-way requirement for their designation. That's about 70 feet. We don't have that in all instances in the township where it's adjacent to the airport. If it were the city, it would be required to have 80 feet of right-of-way. Each property owner is expected to provide their 1/2 share of that. In those discussions, there's no planned improvements to those streets or roads. There's no proposed highway widening. Everybody was very agreeable to say, let's meet the county standard and let's hold off on the city standard. We know that we're working through the master plan for the airport. Things may or may not change. The city owns the property. If 11th Street is improved to a city design standard, the city owns that segment of it on either side. City has the ability to widen the road to meet the requirement if and when that becomes necessary. But it seemed excessive to do at this point in time.
When will that be taken back up after the master plan?
It potentially would not need to be taken up really until the properties in the city, development is happening, And there's that need or demand for a wider street to carry a heavier load of traffic. So probably pretty far down the line. So these are the three criteria that we use to review a variance. If you want to go on to the next slide. The other variance that was applicable anytime we have a subdivision project, there's also this requirement to provide public sidewalks and public improvement plans. With the airport, we're not really doing that. Airport Road was constructed long before there were sidewalk design standards. Bryant Way was constructed when sidewalks were only required on one side of the street. And then obviously the city segment of the streets that are applicable to this project were constructed as rural county roads, and so they did not have a sidewalk component today. It would be really pretty wasteful to try and do just these segments of sidewalk on these particular streets. Whatever happens with Highway 2440 in the future, that's certainly an unknown. KDOT did not request any additional right-of-way. They are not interested in having public sidewalk at this time. So this was a reasonable request for a variance, and it met those variance criteria, so staff was supportive of that. If you would go on to the next slide. So the next three slides are really kind of this discussion of this right-of-way dedication requirements. So in the left, it's what is the designation in the county. The green is what is the designation in the city. In this particular case, Highway 2440 is a principal arterial. It has basically the same design parameters. I will tell you, on principal arterial streets, even when they're in the city, we typically do a variance. A lot of our principal streets, 6th Street, Iowa, 23rd Street, those are all examples of principal arterial streets, and they do not meet this 150-foot wide design standard. The 150 feet really got introduced in the code in 2006. It is really intended for greenfield development where you have a big boulevard in there. And we're not extending those kind of street designs. This is on the planning department's list as a future subdivision regulation update to correct this and probably bring it back down to 100 feet. This particular piece of right-of-way is only about 66 feet. So it is still not compliant even with that design standard. But again, KDOT didn't indicate that they were going to request any additional right-of-way. They have no plans with the highway. And then whatever may or may not change that comes out of the master plan that may or may not affect the alignment of the highway. So again, this was a variance that staff was supportive of. We'll go on to the next one. Okay, so this is where that E1600 road, this is the only piece of it where the city is on both sides. If you go north and south of that yellow segment, you're back into the county. But basically those. So this is again an example of the difference between a rural collector road and a city standard road at 70 feet, 80 feet. In this particular piece, there is some additional new dedication of right-of-way on that subdivision to meet the county design standard for a road, but we're not making the leap all the way to a city standard. So if you want to go on the next one. And then this is North 7th Street or 1500 Road. You have an even smaller segment here. This is a really interesting rural collector road. It extends way up to the north, and at the very end, at the north end of the airport, it actually gets quite wide. So it has way more than we would ever look for being right of way if and when that property comes into the city in the future. It is part of the city's urban growth boundary, so it's feasible that it could be annexed. That's probably down the road quite a bit. We'll go to the next one. Staff recommended approval of that preliminary plat that created those 3 lots. This is a 2-part process. We did the preliminary plat, then the applicant, in this case, the city, will come forward with another application called the final plat, we review that administratively. But then, the city commission has a role in this action for the final plat. It's their responsibility to accept the dedications of easements and rights of way on behalf of the community. So they will fill that function when the final plat is submitted and reviewed and ready to go forward. Anytime, and this probably matters just to a handful of people, anytime we have a vacation of easement or right of way, it also requires city commission action. Back in the day, we used to do that through that subdivision plat drawing. There's been a new interpretation of state law, and so we can't do it that way anymore. So the city commission will actually have to take two actions. One is to approve the plat as we've kind of seen it here, and to approve this request for vacation. So we're vacating, getting rid of and dissolving that right of way that was there in those easements that are no longer necessary. That's kind of a pretty high level of subdivision process, but the benefit of it really puts the city in a position to be able to have those conversations in the future without this extra step that most developers have had to take over the last several years that involves replatting and reconfiguring what's going to happen. So I think it will simplify things ultimately in the long run. A little bit of a headache now, but to set us up to be in a good place in the future. Preliminary plat is done. Really didn't have any conditions. The variances were approved. That action is complete, so nobody has to do anything else with the variances. I am waiting for an application for the final plat. And then once that happens, we do have to do some notice. So I think we're looking July timeframe for the final plat. And once that's done, it actually gets recorded with the Register of Deeds, and anybody can pull it up and it'll show up on our maps and it'll have a color, and that'll be the cue to people to say, oh, this is platted. Matters more for us as the property owner than most anybody else.
Is there any formal aviation board requirement for input on this except for regular public input on it?
No, the process literally goes through the planning commission, the
Good.
city commission,
Okay.
and their role is acting as the planning commission for the area.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
pretty typical even for
Just wanted to
Just
make sure
plans
that
in
we
the
didn't
city,
need to have a
yeah,
meeting
no.
in July or
We would have, by the time we get to a final plat, we really can't make any more changes. It really has to be, okay, the public hearing components, we charge that to happen at the preliminary plat stage, and so that's where we do that.
Well, this is not the aviation board's expertise, so.
Yeah, so it really is a function of land use and setting the property up to be able to get clear building permits, but also for the city to, by example, follow the regulations that we would ask any other developer to follow. So we've had, again, back in the day, that was, really a frequent charge. We'd have some developers who everybody knows their names. City, you didn't do it. Why do I have to do it? And they would try to make that as a valid argument. And a number of years ago, city management said enough is enough. So Parks Department, when they want to do play equipment, they get to do this. Utility projects, you could talk with some staff about a recent water tower project that was a lot of fun to work on.
And this was something that I had requested to try and help make things easier for us as we moved forward. And ultimately, it's identified some, other easements that we didn't know existed or should exist. So it's actually cleaned up some historical information through the whole process.
The city-county interweave is so interesting. I expect that happens at other airports, because airports are always at the edge of town. I had never
But
thought
that-
about this before, so thank you.
Yeah.
Kelly, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Okay.
Hey, Kathleen, can you?
I want to add, if you read Kathleen or Sandy's staff report on this item, which I also posted, it has a broader discussion of the airspace overlay district.
Right.
And those kind of conical maps that protect the
the runways that you may find interesting. And one example, just this week, I think, Sandy, if you guys saw the story in Lawrence Journal World about the golf course development there off of K-10, they're kind of turning it into more of a top golf type of facility. Well, that is in the airspace protection area of our primary runway. And so planning staff checked in with me. I checked in with Garver in terms of what they were doing down there. There are some FAA tools where you can enter pole heights, building heights to see if they would have to file an airspace permit with FAA. In this particular case, they didn't have to. But that's an example of how planning staff on any project is protecting the airport.
If you look, it's on page 6 of the staff report, the little inset map. If you printed that out, it'll show where those different zones are. We have in the city's GIS map, we have, I think it's the wildlife impact zone. It goes out about 10,000 feet. That's a mapped boundary on our GIS. And so when we turn on our zoning layer, all of that information pops up. So the planner knows immediately, oh, I have to check this other thing.
Yeah.
So I think we have really good coordination. Got some newer planners that are in the office that are taking up the mantle of airport planning. So I won't be the only one doing it.
Like zoning district. Go see everybody.
It's yeah, it's a lot to digest.
Well, but we should know that. Okay. Great.
Thank you for coming, Sandy.
Sure.
You're
Welcome.
whole meeting.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
The next item on the agenda is, thank you, Sandy,
Thank you.
is the airport master plan update. Are you gonna do that?
I am gonna do it. We don't have any Garver staff present tonight, so yeah, that's the update that John Ross just sent. So if you recall our last meeting, we had open houses at the airport. Stakeholder meeting on the second, a public meeting on the night after, which Commissioner Dorsey attended, and it was like just a huge attendance that night. So lots of great public input, and Garver took those comments, and we've taken those additionally back to FAA. So John provided kind of just this quick one-page update as to where we stand right now. So the fifth element is what was presented at the open houses back in April, the development alternatives. We took kind of the preferred layout to FAA's, our Central Region Planner, Russ Owen, who also was able to make it out to the airport for our stakeholder meeting. And they are digesting kind of those concepts and drafting that particular chapter. So that's the work underway right now. They're working on the narrative of the development alternative chapter. I haven't seen that yet. So that'd be the next work product. And as soon as I get that, I will push that out to you.
That's what, chapter 5?
Chapter 5.
All right.
I did ask John today kind of what his final timeline is for
Yeah.
wrapping up the master plan. He thought about 8 weeks after this development alternative chapter is presented. He should have it all put together. So
Okay, and,
maybe by the August meeting, but maybe not.
okay, so what we may want to do is, if it doesn't happen by the August meeting, I'll give everybody fair warning, we may have to have a September rather than an October meeting.
Right.
Or in addition to.
Those next steps will be for the essentially the more or less final version of the master plan to come to you guys and make a recommendation to the governing body. It would get on the governing body's agenda for final adoption.
Right, and we will get chapter 5, right?
Yes, you'll get chapter 5 as soon as I have it. So
Okay,
that, I think, is the master plan update.
okay, and I noticed, I made a note to myself on the next 2 items that it might be better to go to the land use report first, and then do the rest of the update. Is that okay?
Sure.
What's the coming up?
Yeah, I'll cover that one and I'm gonna pull it up and I'll share it, Kathleen, on my end. Oh, okay. Cause I figured out I could, so
Okay.
Cool. All right.
I was sharing with Carrie when we weren't sharing with Carrie.
That's good.
Sharing is caring. You know, like, confusing the person. All right, so you guys did receive a pretty sizable, well, I guess that one's 13-page document from us. I'm trying to get back to my Zoom. Sorry.
I'm gonna call it up
I
here
got it. I'm on it.
so that they can see it on the screen.
Yep, that's what they'll see it on the screen now. Just go back to the Zoom.
Ah,
Okay.
thank you.
So you received the document, and I just wanted to give kind of a verbal like run through of what we received. And sort of a little bit of a timeline, since some of you are maybe coming into this a little bit more pulled than others. So back last summer, Scott and I had just been out to Renton, Washington, and been getting some training from the Aviation Association that we belong to. And we got contacted by the FAA, and they would like to do a land use inspection. So they came out and visited us on September 12th. And that was Thursday or Friday, I can't remember, but it was towards the end of the week. And we spent the bulk of an afternoon, I believe, with them. And it took quite some time. I'm sure changing administrations didn't help, but we did get back a report on the 22nd of April from them. And it had some areas for action, and I've listed these out on this page. This is real high level. Again, like you can read in the entirety, everything, but talk about the master plan, incompatible land uses, leases, safety, minimum standards, and pavement management. So just on the item here, the airport master plan, obviously we were just talking about that. So that's currently being updated. It's something that they obviously have an interest in as a guiding document for the work that they're helping fund or support out at our airport. And that Exhibit A, Scott, that's that map, right? That comes with the master plan.
The AOP is the map. I
Okay.
think you're talking about. Exhibit A is kind of an attachment to this
This-
document.
Okay.
That needs a little bit of updating.
Yes, so those two things are kind of work themselves through with our master plan, and as part of this land use forward, there was a corrective action plan that we also received and then had to respond to. So we will be providing them updates saying, okay, in fact, Scott, probably one of the things we can include is that we received an update at our board meeting on this. And then the next thing that we anticipate is the element number 5, as we were discussing, coming to us as a work product here shortly. And that, you know, we're in the home stretch. So that was one of the things we have to update on. Sorry. The next thing is what they call incompatible land uses. These are all fun terminologies that perhaps the aviation board knows better than some of us who are non-aviation people, but there was 2 things that they called out there in particular, which were tie down fees on the apron, which is covered in the land use report, as well as space being used in the terminal by another tenant, not the FBO. So the city will be working to respond on those as well as part of our corrective action plan that we've had to turn back in. So now the next session is leases. There's 2 segments of leases under this. The first is aeronautical leases and then non-aeronautical leases. On the aeronautical side, they had a series of things that they're wanting us to look at. And right now the city is working with its outside attorney and some of our other professional groups that we use to kind of revise some language in lease agreements. That includes everything from like a T-hanger lease up to any other type of lease that we have out there. So we will be happy to come back to you guys. That's kind of at the end of the day. The story is we'll bring back, as we get the proposed kind of like standard template completed, what that's going to look like. So over the next few months, we're going to have all kinds of really boring legalese that we show you, but those things will get updated, and we'll have to sit down and work with each individual tenant or lessor to update those with the different terms and conditions that they call out. Not everything in there that that they mention with every lease is an issue. It's just kind of a carte blanche dump that they gave in all those bullets. Sarah's
Yeah, it's
looking
like
at them right now.
15 bullets.
Yeah,
Are you, have you established contact with KU?
yes.
Somebody that
in
can
fact,
actually talk with?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
good
had
question.
a really good conversation. Scott and I did a couple of weeks ago with Monty Sukup and just to kind of, we have a document, the original 1997, is that right, Scott?
No,
it was
like 77.
77, yeah, that's what I said. Did I say 1977?
And I said 97.
Oh, no, I meant
Close.
1977, sorry. I was definitely, I graduated.
That was a while ago.
That year too, but anyway, I was alive in 77. So the good thing there is we have a relationship with them. And what they're wanting us to work on there is the fact that they have something called a through the fence. I don't know how many of you have heard of the through the fence, but the through the fence agreement is what we have to work on with them because they literally sit on the boundary line of our property in which the fence would normally be going is right in front of their doors. So, and clearly since the property came to us through an agreement with KU,
We want to be nice.
we want to be nice. So anyway, just to know that pretty much anybody that in this room is going to be hearing from us on a whole variety of things related to any leases that you have with us from TA Inverse to other buildings. So I apologize about that, but we're gonna get those done.
Okay, good.
And then there's a couple others that are kind of hanging chads out there that we have discussed from time to time, I believe with this board over the last couple of years anyway, that are non-aeronautical. One of them is our lease for I think it's like hay baling basically on the property. Not sure what we need to do there yet. That one wasn't one that was terribly disconcerting to update whatever that is. But we do have the hangar that's on the far western side that's currently occupied by a non-aeronautical use that would be Don's Diesel. And we have let them know that this is going to be a concern, but we'll have to work through them in relation to what the FAA expects of us as a recipient of their funds for airports. So that one's going to take some time. It's going to be a lot of work, but just to let you know, that one's on the list.
Right.
And then the next area is safety, and this pertains to a Unicom license. And Scott, maybe you can just kind of explain what you've been trying to finish and accomplish here for us.
Sure.
3.00.
Yeah, so the board is kind of familiar with the Unicom issue because Doug
yeah.
Tillman brought it up last year in terms of possibly changing our frequency. And we knew that the license had expired a number of years ago and just hadn't been renewed. So that's a process I've started. There is documentation on the Federal Communications website on how to renew an expired license. So I'm trying to get our existing old FRN number, which is associated with our frequency, transferred to the city of Lawrence and renew that permit. So that's in the works.
Okay, where was it before? If you're transferring it to the city?
It was with the city. The prior fleet manager for the city had apparently renewed it all those years, and he was no longer an employee. So
okay.
I'm not sure why it didn't get renewed when it, expired in 2020. It just probably didn't get to the right person. He's like, yes.
Yeah.
What's the
Yeah.
term on it this time for the
I
license? Do
haven't
you know?
seen that. I'm still trying to work through the technicalities of getting it transferred.
Yeah, I want to make sure that we
Yeah.
have a follow-up note on the calendar.
Yes.
Well, and
Is there a fee?
I think.
Oh, yeah.
I'm
Sure.
sure so. It's probably de minimis.
Probably.
The big thing here, though, with what Scott's doing is we're going to be documenting this process, and then we're going to put some notations into our credentialing materials, which also turn out to be like a whole bunch of policies and procedures.
Yeah, well,
for us.
he wants to know about this in particular.
Right, and so for us, this is a critical one that needs a path and needs to be stayed up upon going forward. So, like I said, Scott's got the ball rolling. He's having fun, convincing him to turn it over to us from the now retired, probably gone 10-year employee. But we will get there over the next hopefully couple of weeks. So that's the goal. Okay. So more to follow, but once we get an update on that, we'll bring it back to you guys.
All right, good.
Any other questions on the Unicom?
And now I guess we can go now to
I'm
the,
still going.
are you?
Yeah, more.
Oh, never mind. Go ahead.
Gary, did you see that? She tried to get off this already. Yeah, he's like, so anyway, the next thing is minimum standards, which we've been talking about. So probably, and then we had that meeting back in January, and again, most of the folks in this room, with the exception of a few, were there at one of the two sessions we held, one during the day, one in the evening. AMCG, I always want to mix the letters around, kind of like the year 1977. We anticipate the August meeting coming back to you guys. So that's kind of the timeline for that.
And you're gonna be able to get them to us at least a week in advance?
I have down a week and a half
Okay,
minimum.
please.
These are meaty documents, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, no, so that's kind of high on the priority list. These are things, again, we've already had underway that the FAA is noting in this land use report that are ones that we already had identified we needed to work on, so.
Is that gonna have all the SASO stuff and all the peripherals that go with that? Okay.
Yes, so we're not bored. And then the pavement management program, I guess the last time that we turned in an update to them was 2023 and it's 2025. So we'll work on getting them stuff there, but we are clearly obviously working on trying to do updates. So the pavement management program is definitely being done here at the city. That is all I have on that one, guys. Doesn't get any more exciting, but if you have other questions after reading, please let me know, but you'll be getting any updates we're doing. We'll be bringing things back through to you so that you're approving those as we go. Okay?
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
If you let one, you have to let all of them.
It wasn't clear to me at all what the FAA wanted to happen with the Unicom.
First of all, license.
I mean, they were saying it's not fair for the FBO to operate the Unicom. So are they saying that a city employee needs to sit there and monitor the Unicom instead of the FBO? Is that what they want?
Not that they've conveyed to us.
Not that they can adjust, but we clearly will be trying to understand all of this as we go forward. So we'll tell them, hey, we got this re-upped, now what? So, because again, they're the ones telling us that we have to tell them what our corrective actions are.
I'm pretty sure that there is no required monitoring on that except for what people who are using the frequency.
Well, the Unicom
Nobody needs to sit there and listen to it all.
is different from a common traffic advisory frequency, which is just airplanes talking to each other. The Unicom exists so that someone at the base can provide weather information.
Yes.
But we have UAS.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
Unicom is a CTF for us,
Well, yeah,
function.
would it make sense to change it to a CTAF instead of a Unicom?
that's a good question. I don't know the answer.
We'll take on that one, guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what was the other term you used, Sarah?
CTF, common traffic advisory frequency. CTF. We have to look up the FAA definitions, but.
Well, I can get there from here.
Yeah. Why would the FAA not mention it?
We don't know. Figured out, but I'll ask. That's a good question. You can ask Angie your.
Okay. I guess the next item then is gonna be, update on the Apron report and what's gonna be going on with that. Scott, are you doing that or Melissa?
Well, maybe both of us. I kind of updated Lloyd today. We try to meet once a month, especially before aviation board meetings. And I did post the kind of draft city commission agenda report on that item. We were initially targeting an early June city commission meeting to award the Apron project. However, there's kind of a different obstacles that will probably prevent the Apron from getting under construction this year. First and foremost is we still haven't got our FAA grant agreements, and that's not
uncommon nationwide, according to a couple of AAA meetings I've been on. The Trump administration is reworking the grant agreement language, and so they have not provided our grant agreements for this project. So we still don't have those in hand. They've provided a template document that we have shipped off to our city attorney's office, and they're at least beginning an initial review of the template instrument. But so that's one obstacle. And you know, the city is kind of working globally on that topic with other transportation elements, you know, in terms of how is the city going to be able to react to a grant agreement for not only airport projects, but other federally funded transportation projects when we see those documents. So that's one thing. The other thing hanging out there is the Bettis bid hold. Bids were opened in February. Their bid hold expires June 25th. So that's expired, meaning, you know, it's not going to be good anymore. So we did reach out to Bettis Asphalt, talk to Mark Bettis, their company president. They are open to extending their bid hold for really another year. And in fact, in talking to Mark, their construction season is already pretty scheduled for the summer. In fact, if we got our grant agreements today, I'm not sure they could jump on it until probably football season, which is not good for the airport anyway. So,
Well, that's good news.
yeah, so we're working on a document that Bettis will execute that will extend their bid pricing till April of next year. So that gives us a little bit of breathing room to hopefully get this under contract early spring, get it all wrapped up before expected World Cup traffic in early June of next year, when the World Cup season will start in Kansas City. And then finally, the third element we posted, the working through some of the FAA issues with Hedrick Air Services. So that's kind of my update. We could see the Apron on an agenda. Staff has asked our city attorney's office to see if we can award the contract to Bettis pending receipt of the grant agreements, but I'm not sure if that will happen.
Will the city go along with that?
I don't know. That's an outstanding question we've given our city attorney's office. So,
Okay.
but if we can get that, which Bettis will execute this kind of one-page agreement extending their bid hold date till April, we should have at least some breathing room to get this all put to bed and under contract.
So we'll probably know enough to say something at the August meeting.
Yes, I would hopefully think so, yes. And FAA has told us, Central Region staff, that they expect grant agreements to be shipped out to us anytime, but we can't get a date out of them, so.
Well, it's out of the region's control. I mean,
It is totally out of the region's control. But
They're
that's exactly
frustrated,
right.
yeah.
That's exactly right.
All right, other questions? Okay, Scott, you get lots of more. Report managers report.
Okay. I don't want to go through all the details here, probably just highlight some of the key elements, probably on page 2. I think I shipped out the notice of the KIP grant award when we received that in April to the board. So some good news from the KDOT, Kansas Airport Improvement Grant Program. We did receive funding in the amount of $660,000 for design and rehab of runway 119. KDOT kind of changed their rules this year in terms of their grant application process. In the past, you had to put together a design application and then a construction application. This year, they said you could bundle those. So we were able to do that. Garver thinks that should be sufficient to rehab 119. We're discussing among city staff whether we have the budget to get that started this year or next year. Usually the grant agreements give you a 2-year window to get the project completed. So, you know, we do have a little bit of wiggle room there. Probably ideally, it'd be great to get it done before World Cup, but I'm not sure budget wise if that will happen or not. We'll know more when the city's CIP is posted here in a couple weeks. So I did put that date down if you guys wanna, and I'll probably push it out to you guys too, when
Yeah.
the city commission considers the city's capital improvement program. We'll see what airport projects are recommended for approval on June 17th. Garver is also working on taxiway 80 lighting project. In fact, just before this meeting, Brett Holt sent me a 90% design plans on that project. So probably Aaron Parker, I've asked him to come to the August meeting to give you an update
Okay.
on that project.
Is any of this bill money on either of those? Or no?
No, the only thing we've got bill money wrapped up in right now is the Apron project.
Okay.
We've got at least 2 years of
Yeah.
probably bill funding wrapped into the
295, 2 times 2.
Yeah. wrapped into the Apron project. So we should have at least one, maybe more, year of bill funding kind of still available to us.
Mhm.
We still haven't closed the books on the taxi lane reconstruction project, and we'll have some rebate coming
Really?
back from that because of the deduct we took from the contractor Sunflower Paving. So we'll have some credits coming back to us from that project once we finally close that out. On page 3, I'll highlight the KDOT cost share grant application. That could be another one that we could get awarded. And we submitted that in the spring. We just checked in with them this week to see if they've made any decisions yet. And the project we submitted on was improvement at Airport Road and the long-term parking. We've got the plan essentially put together. We've been searching for a funding stream for that project. So that will, if we should get lucky enough to get that grant, we'll have to do some budget finagling or discussions with that project as well. Let's see, I posted the updated budget calendar, and I think let's go have more budget discussion at some point during this meeting. Let's see, Aviation Youth Camp was last Saturday. Man, it was a great event. Thank you to Sarah and Clancy and Doug and Lloyd's staff and Eurotech staff for just hosting a great event. Carrie Gooch for piloting. Thank you. We had 30 kids, 30 campers. It was just a wonderful weather day, and turned out great.
Yeah, it was always,
Yeah.
kids were engaged.
Yeah. Let's see, Watkins, I did check in with them today. I just talked with Steve Nowak. He has a person that he's identified that's going to help us start on the history project. So more info to come on that. And then finally, Wichita State, their Public Policy and Management Center is offering, well, they offered a kind of a seminar on economic development 101 that I took part in. Well, Kathleen did too a couple weeks ago, but they're offering a more in-depth discussion at a city management summit on June 12th next week. And I think I'm going to try to get down for that. And they're calling it Airports and Economic Development 102. So more to come on that.
Okay.
I think that's about it.
Okay, who is running the United Way hangout at the hangar?
Yeah, so it's a committee of United Way folks, at least 2 or 3 of
They're
them.
liaising with you guys?
Yeah, so I've been setting out meetings. Richard Haig has been setting in. I'm thinking of other airport people. Someone from Lloyd's office, Randy Sutton, is trying to attend as well. Yeah, and yeah, the event will be in the newest Tetrick hangar at the airport in September.
Okay. Any questions for Scott? Anybody? Okay. All right. Would anybody like to make a comment on board items, unless there's anything else? Here, the board did meet on May 14th for a training session. And I'd like any feedback from anybody on the board to let me know.
It was super useful. I'm really glad you guys did it.
Yeah.
Ideally, it would be done earlier in the
Yes,
board session,
I
but it was very helpful. On the other hand, I grasped, or what to say, more nuances doing it later in my term than if it was earlier, but still I would advise for me. But no, we clicked along. It was really good. I mean, a lot of info, but it was good. Thank you.
yeah. Okay, well, we do have 2 board potential slots coming up by the end of August. yours, Sarah, and Jim Lasters. And I know that both of you have reapplied, but I don't know what the issue will be with KU. So we don't know.
Yeah, I don't know that we have any updates.
You're not having enough.
Would that be another spot or you mean one of,
We don't know.
but we don't,
We don't,
because it never worked this year yet.
I'll have that solved.
yeah, because I want to keep both of you.
Well, I think I can say this.
issue with KU?
We have a 7-person limitation
Yeah.
on the board. We now have 7 people. And in the past, KU has been one of the 7. They did not appoint somebody. The last iteration, when the city revamped all of the advisory boards. So when David Hyab left, there's somebody from KU, because he went off to do
Oh,
something.
I nobody volunteered.
Yeah, well, or KU didn't appoint somebody, or I'm not quite sure whether they have to go through the city appointment process or KU appoints them.
Don't know.
We don't know. So
We will know.
eventually, okay, so, I don't know how long. Presumably you and Jim will get some kind of notice from the city. There may be other applicants for all we know. I don't know the answer to that. And they don't.
I have this with Connected City as well, that
Yeah.
applies before, and so.
Yeah,
And different people do it differently, because I've tried before, several years back, the mayor met with all the candidates. This
Yeah.
time the mayor didn't.
that happened with me on my
Yeah.
first appointment too, so there we go. Okay, so we'll know some more of that over the summer, and if any of you hear about it before I do, let me know. I do have some to pass around. Compass Rose potential, which may not mean very much until we
You
are
get the
able,
apron, exactly.
until we get the apron. But here's some samples of what it could look like from another 99s project in New Mexico.
And the Northeast Kansas chapter of the 99s is ready and willing to do it.
Yeah, the 99s has been doing Compass Roses for nearly 100 years.
Really?
And I
Yeah.
have a 99s.
She said 99 years.
Well, almost
99 years.
As a matter of fact, the 99s will have their 100th anniversary, the same year
Yeah.
as this airport.
Oh, that's even cool.
I know.
Something together.
We totally need to.
Yeah, in any case, I have a professional landscape designer who has done about 10 of these, who is willing to do the one for our airport when we are ready.
Oh,
Leo?
what do you mean a professional designer?
Carol
He would-
Floyd,
Oh, Carol, good.
okay.
Because, some of the members of our chapter have done these before. Tammy and Sherry have done them.
Almost everybody in the 99s has done it
Right.
before.
Right.
Carol will do the drawings for us
Oh, I see.
and
Yeah.
provide the paint, requirements and so forth. So whenever that's ready, at some point, we need to work with everybody on the report. So this is just an idea to keep in the back.
Yeah, there's requirements that paint, the Pantone number and everything. There's-
Yeah, I think.
Carol, I'm sure is that guy.
He's given.
Yeah, I've given, well, that's what I don't know about the paint that specifications that I gave you is whether that is for a 90-foot or 120-foot compass rose. And there are other
Did you
issues.
pull it off the 99's website?
No, I got it from Carol Durant.
Well, we'll sure you got it from.
There's that. I need to know from everybody on upcoming conferences. There is the Kansas Association of Airports Conference. I believe it's October 1st through 3rd. Is that right, Scott? In Garden City. And normally,
We went last year.
yeah,
And what in Norway.
in Pico, we could have gone down here. This one, we were to,
Oh, yeah.
if anybody wants to go, we will have to make arrangements for registration and hotels and that kind of thing. So if anybody is interested in participating, please let me or Melissa or Scott know that. Similarly, the Four States Conference is August 20th, I believe,
Yeah, I believe so. Look real quick.
in Kansas City, and it is definitely worthwhile. Willem, if you have never been to one, it's fascinating. Yeah, so, and that one, we usually just travel back and forth, but do let somebody know, because I believe in, one of them, there was a deadline about hotels. The 4 states is, if you're gonna stay in Kansas City, is a July 20th deadline on the hotel reservation. And I don't know what the deal is in Garden City at all.
Information should be coming out
Yeah,
next week.
yeah, okay. One thing I'd like the board to consider is 2029 is not only the 99th 100th anniversary, but it's also the airport centennial. And I'm, under the current regulations, I would like to have some kind of subcommittee out of the board to assist with planning on that event or events. We've already started some work with the Historical Museum for a display. Are they gonna do that at the airport, Scott?
I think that's
Yeah.
yeah.
And we have turned over a lot of, Scott and I have turned over a lot of material to them already of the historical nature, so there'll be something going on for that, for sure. But we do need the city commission's permission to have a committee. So, I'd like for some discussion and a vote on that, if anybody would care to talk about that. I figure we need at least, we can't have more than 3 people.
Well, so Melissa said we should, the 99s and the airport, I could do this together.
And the chamber may have some interest in it too. I mean, we just need to do some exploratory work initially, so. Comments, Sarah?
Well, I just said that we should do it with the 99s. I mean, I have no idea, who knows if I would be on the board then, so I couldn't really be, I couldn't be on the
We'll
sub.
find you.
Yeah.
I don't know that
Dave,
the
no
committee members, you need to be on the board.
No, not at all.
I think the discussion
It's just
is
authorization.
is to
Yeah.
recommend to the city commission that
That we do a
committee, yeah.
Right,
Exactly.
since we have to get the governing body to approve
Yes.
subsidies. Well, I would move that we ask the governing
Yeah.
body if we
Okay.
can do it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye, Carrie?
Oh, Kathleen, can you go back to the Zoom, please?
He's probably,
Just don't need to Google
he's probably
anything.
waving.
I said aye.
And hey, can you admit Ron runs, please?
Oh, good.
Ah, what's out there?
Yay, Ron.
In Greenland.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Ron,
Hey, Ron, are you there?
he was connected. Hello, Ron.
Ask to unmute. What time is it in Greenland? It's gotta be,
Wait.
it's gotta be about 2:30 in the morning.
Yeah, in the morning or
It's
something.
Yeah.
Just leave that out. Don't.
Okay.
He's probably sleeping.
Hello, I'm here.
There you go. Hey. Although it looks like there's light there.
Are you awake?
Sort of. It's like, what time is it here? It's like 11 o'clock here.
Oh, that's
Well,
not.
that's not too bad.
But it's so bright outside.
Hey, listen, I got up at 1 o'clock this morning and it was still bright outside.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
because it's in Greenland.
So far.
Yeah, we're like 62 degrees north, I think, or 63 degrees north, something like that.
Okay, so, Ron, we were just talking about, requesting permission from the city commission for a Centennial Subcommittee. And so it's been voted on. You missed the vote, but too bad. And so what do we do next? Do I write a letter? How do I work this? I write a
So
letter.
what you would do, chairperson, is contact the mayor and commissioners with a letter just requesting to establish a subcommittee of the Aviation Advisory Board. Go ahead and copy me on that. Then I think they have to take some kind of formal action at a commission meeting to
Okay.
establish it.
Well, we're getting started in plenty of time.
Yeah, so,
So.
Yeah.
So, okay. And then the only other item I have on my list is on June 18th, you are doing a chamber tour or something at the airport. I can't be there. I will, nor can Sarah.
No, we're gonna be time.
We're gonna be, we're gonna be.
Yeah, you're gonna be in
errands.
You know the way it goes.
So if anybody else on the board is gonna be around, I would recommend that you coordinate with Scott and try to attend that event.
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock to 10:30 is what I've got.
talked to Lloyd about that today, and I've emailed, Katie Brown of Eurotech, Commissioner Dorsey, if you want to attend, that'd be great. It's, kind of a chamber economic development tour of the airport.
Cool.
Usually they invite me.
Yeah, great.
Well, it says you can go.
18th, right?
Yes.
June 18th.
Okay.
9 o'clock.
Right.
Yeah, and that's at the airport, right? That's all I have.
Did have
You
some
said
budget.
June 18, I'll be in Frankfurt.
Oh, too bad.
Can you bring me back some vice first?
Okay, okay,
budget.
Melissa, you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I just want to, well, one, just to comment, that we do have budget for travel for you guys to go out to Garden City. It's not a very large pot of money, but we do have money. So once I know who's going, we can put it through a travel request.
How
for
many
you guys.
people do you recommend that we limit it to?
Well, if we have a quorum, we have to advertise it. So there you go.
Okay,
So if, if you want to split up between 4 states and the Kansas Association of Airports.
well, Sarah and I have both been to KAA meetings.
Yeah, I'd be interested in going to 4 states. I'll just be
Okay.
coming back from a visit in Seattle, but it should work.
Okay,
So you could put me down.
So- okay,
Because that's just in Kansas City. We
Yeah.
can go back and forth.
yes, it's downtown in Kansas City. Okay, so if anybody's interested in one of those, let Melissa and or Scott know. Or me, and I'll pass it on.
Yep.
Okay,
And then Kathleen, do you have the budget thing to share? Because you were still in it. So when I was trying to pull it up on my end, it was.
oh, that's right.
Just a real quick run through on budget. This is not capital, so.
How do I get it to come down?
You
Wait, you
hit the share.
well, she's trying to, well, I'll go down.
Reduce the screen.
Yeah, don't reduce the screen,
Here
just
it
hit
is.
share.
Okay.
There you go. And then go to slideshow. There you go. Okay. And then you can just move them off to the right or left side. There you go. Good enough. It's not. Okay, go ahead, click to the next. This is just quick. Oh, it's automating.
I guess so, yeah.
Okay, keep clicking. All right, so we're just gonna quickly go over our preliminary budget for 26, really high level. The fund forecast is really what I'm wanting to show you guys, and the rest of it is all kind of stuff we've talked about before. So go ahead quickly. So on the right-hand side, she's showing revenues and expenditures. I'm gonna stand up, and I'm sorry, guys, you will not be able to see me on screen.
I see good point. Thank you.
But yeah, I'm gonna point. So this is 25. This is what we anticipate in revenues for the airport, and this is then the airport fund itself. And then down here is total expenses. So you can see there's quite a bit of a delta. So we're eating into funds available. This has been going on within the airport fund for some time because we've been making the capital improvements and significant maintenance and repairs. Okay, so just understand, but it is a problem. Okay, that's the only reason I'm standing here tonight. And that's something that Kathleen and Scott and I have been talking about for the better part of 9 months now. So going into 26,
That's why there's a transfer in, so.
right, the transfer in is coming from the general fund. It's pretty significant in the current year. Almost $500,000 is coming as a transfer in. So this is property taxpayers in Lawrence paying for the airport. So typically a little bit of that, okay. A lot of it, not so good. So in 26, we're showing an increase in revenues. We don't have them identified particularly to talk about tonight, but we have some ideas that we're going to want to bring back to the board. So this is just my heads up that we're going to be bringing some opportunities or options back to you, along with some of the other stuff that we've talked about tonight. So we won't be bored at meetings for a while. So we are showing a pretty significant increase, about 8% in revenues, which is helpful, but it really doesn't get down to our negative net position that we end up in of about $200,000 in year end 26, and these are actual calendar years. And the problem is we just continue to draw down funds available to the point where we don't have any funds available. So something's going to have to change. I'm waiting for our budget office to come back to me and go, hey, wait, that doesn't work, because they're going to have to. So just that's kind of my warning there. And if you want to go ahead to the next graphic. Oh, yes. Part of the reason is because the city's having problems with its budget. Okay. So to be clear and transparent, this is me allocating 100% of Scott's position, the airport manager position, and 100% of our maintenance position to the airport, because that's what they work on primarily. Now, Scott has some other duties, but we're trying to shift some of that around. And by 26, our intention is that airport manager, that's all they do. Okay.
Yeah.
So again, but I'm also killing funds available. Okay. Like we aren't allowed, like the federal government, sorry, it's just my joke, to run a negative balance in funds. So
Trillions in debt.
no, the word trillion doesn't exist in our world. Yeah, I mean, we try billion. Okay. So anyway, that's this. And then we also have some legal expenses that are coming up, which I'm sure some of you understand why. But we also have some more capital costs, things out there like our mowing tractor. You know, it's just different stuff that we have to replace from time to time. And then again, general fund support reductions, because again, general fund taxpayers that don't ever use the airport should not be having to contribute $405,000 ongoing every year to run the airport. So that's where we're at. That doesn't mean that the general fund won't continue to help, maybe for a while. I mean, that's just unfortunately not terribly uncommon, but not to the tune of $500,000. So that's kind of what we're looking at. And, you know, we don't have that. We have to figure out what this play is to keep ourselves above water. And Kathleen, you were saying we shouldn't be operating below $150,000 in fund balance is kind of best practice.
Yeah, 10 or 15% of $860,000. That's how much you should have.
Yeah.
Just
So
fund balance.
we're just trying to, that we'll have a fund balance target. And if you want to go to the next screen,
So where's your interest income coming from? So
Interest
it's
income?
The bank somewhere, right? Interest income, probably.
yes, because we had fund balance.
Okay.
So we were accruing. Yeah,
Okay.
we were accruing. This is going to start to go lower. Yeah.
You disappear.
Slower.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. And it was higher before. It also depends on rates, but go ahead and hit the next slide.
I'd like to make a comment there, Melissa, on that last slide, if you would.
Oh, sure.
I mean, you made the comment that taxpayers in Lawrence shouldn't be paying for, if they're not using the airport, shouldn't be paying for it. Well, taxpayers in Lawrence pay for roads and streets and all that they don't use all the time. And therefore you're saying that if I never drive on 6th Street, I shouldn't have to pay for it. That's really the analogy that you're making. The
Yeah, I
airport,
understand what you're saying.
yeah, the airport is a piece of infrastructure that the city needs and brings revenue to the city that is not directly attributable to the airport. Just like roads and bridges bring revenue to the city that is not attributed to the roads and the bridges directly. And so we need to somehow educate the budgeting people that's just reality with an airport.
It's a reality to the extent that we've tried to do some recovery. So we have a few things we've done, but there's other things that we can do. So it's trying to find that balance of how much is reasonable versus how much we're just doing because we haven't taken some other steps that we need to. So we'll be working through that, Ron. And I understand what you're saying exactly, because there are a lot of things that I don't use that are city services that are provided to me and my family, and I still pay for them. So I think all of us can understand that, but it's sort of trying to appreciate what we consider as a reasonable amount. And I would say that when we're getting up towards $500,000 on a fund that only has expenses, yeah, it's half. So
how much does it cost to maintain 6th Street and keep 6th Street up a year? That's the exact same analogy. And so you've got to make those analogies, Melissa, because to expect an airport of this size to be revenue neutral.
I didn't say revenue neutral. I said
Okay.
it just has to get better. Because a
understand.
half
Okay.
million is too much with a fund
Yeah.
that's not even spending $1 million.
But even if you get like twice the number of businesses than we have currently at the airport, would you even make more, would you make sufficient money then? Because how much income does really come from those businesses?
Well, right now, we don't have a lot of agreements that we should have in place, so I think that will change some of this. Again, we're not going for perfect, we're going for better. And
This is all part of the thing we talked about on the 14th, is how we fit what the airport needs to do in order to do a better job of generating revenue as part of the city's strategic plan. And whether we like it or not, we're still part of the city's strategic plan and their budgeting.
so,
And our capital projects
Yeah.
have to compete with building a new
Yeah.
fire station,
Absolutely.
repaving 6th Street,
Yeah.
building a new.
and really, when we don't have the match, which is what's going on here, when we don't have the match, which is this next thing, so Ron, this is kind of where this is going. So, when we go out and do requests for federal funds, and it's great because we get awarded them or state funds, but we're not even generating enough money to do a match on any of these.
Yeah, and they all pretty much want to match, yeah.
Right, they generally do.
Yep.
So we just really have to look at what our revenues are doing for us. And again, I'm not suggesting the answer. I'm simply suggesting we have to look at it.
Yeah.
And we're gonna have to think more intentionally about how we conduct our business. And obviously, the goal is not to drive people out and have empty hangars, because that does none of us any good. It doesn't do Lloyd any good. It doesn't do our fund any good. So we have to be responsible business owners and treat this like a business. So, but here you go. You can just kind of see some of the stuff that we have sitting here that we've been doing. In fact, I think in the land use report, there was $21 million the FAA's invested into our airport over the last 30 years.
Wow.
That's a lot of money, but that always requires a match from the city. So whether that comes through airport revenues of any sort. And I think what we have to do is we really need to look at, like, what are we trying to match? Because we're really responsible for the operation maintenance side, where the capital, the feds have kind of always said, we're going to give them the mother load of that money to you to keep that, because we want aviation available in our country. So right now, we're not meeting basic maintenance stuff that we need to be able to do. So anyway, lots of projects sitting out here, and we'll share this with you guys. I will link it to the agenda in the final minutes so that you can kind of see, like, where in what years and what the split is, where it's cash needed from the airport versus federal grant money. So you can kind of get an understanding of what that looks like as Scott and Kathleen and I are trying to figure out how to, like, rack and stack things. I mean, there's been a lot of dialogue going on today with a few things that are on here, just trying to go, well, how can we make this work? Scott says it's got 2 years that we can play with when we spend the money. So we're doing that just like you do with your home budget, trying to figure out, like, okay, I can't do this year, but I could do it late next year. So same type of thing going on. So next one.
Ask a question.
Wait.
No, okay, so good.
Yeah, and then did you go to the next one? Okay, this is just our unfunded, just so you know that there's things out there that, we've heard you talk about. They're sitting out here. They don't have funding. They're not going to have funding anytime soon, especially not with what the next one shows. And again, we'll send this out to you. But you can see here, we're crossing a bad point sometime this year, basically. So what is your fund balance and your percent of revenues? So
Yeah, that assumes 100,000 a year from the city.
yeah, and this is assuming $100,000.
That making money out at the airport.
Yeah, but that's, I mean, so no, well, I mean, other people make money at the airport. We do get our leases off our T hangars, and we've adjusted some of that. But again, some of those things we talked about, that's why the FAA wants us to work at this, I think, to a certain extent. They're not telling us what we need to do to generate revenue at the end of the day, but they do require some effort towards being a little more self-sufficient than we are. So I just wanted to show this to you guys because nothing like a good visual to not help you to demonstrate what it is that we're facing here internally, because we want to be able to give the folks that use our airport the type of greeting coming into Lawrence that we would, want them to have, right? We want them to land on a nice runway. We want them to have a great spot to come into our terminal building. And there's things that we've already done, but there's more that you all have identified we need to do. So I just want to share this with you. I see things like this in my career. Normally they're out a few more years before I have to deal with them. And you can kind of go like that, but this one's going to require a little bit more immediacy and urgency on our part. So I didn't want to escape tonight without sharing that on the backs of everything else we talked about. So, and we will be going, as Scott noted, with the capital plan. You can go ahead and take this down. With the capital improvements plan, starting on I think it's the 16th, we bring it to Connected City, which is our advisory group for that outcome, which is our infrastructure commitment for this, our outcome for the city. So we'll be talking about that. And then we'll also be going the next night, I think it's the 17th, to the city commission to present the CIP, which is not just airport, obviously. It's things like Ron was saying with 6th Street, other huge projects, whether it's Parks and Rec or something IT would need, which I don't think ever rises up to get in the level funded. So imagine being our IT department. We're not very exciting for them. So, but yeah, so we'll be there with that. And year over year for the last couple of years, we've been running north of 400 million in a 5-year annual or 5-year plan for capital improvements. This year, we're over 550, I think, million. So we've been putting a lot in because a lot wasn't done for a long time. You guys know that at the airport, just as well as the rest of the city knows it on its streets, sidewalks, and so on and so forth. So sorry, this is my doggy downer. I apologize, but it was where it got landed on the agenda.
Do you look at all
I'm gonna sit back.
how much money the airport really brings in? Not actually cash, but just businesses that are here and that's how it affects Lawrence, like, your tech standing and they have to be at an airport, so it's.
The
companies like
EDC tries to put some numbers to that. The chamber try to put numbers to that to a certain extent. But when I'm looking at our books, I can only do what the accountants allow. So,
Yeah.
so I understand what you're saying and I appreciate it because we know, and when I talk to the economic development folks, I know that this is a little gem sitting out there. So, I've heard people say it since I've been here and I was like, whoa, you can't do that. They're like, oh, we could just sell the airport. No, you can't. Number one, you can't. And two, it's an asset. It's
Well,
a community asset.
The Kansas Airport Economic Development folks, KDOT put out a study based on 2016 data in 2017. And the data showed that this airport should be bringing in around $30 million of economic impact into the city. It is not. It is, and that's extrapolated to when I did the numbers 2 years ago, trying to keep us have an aviation board instead of one person on Connected City.
But that's because it's not enough business.
No, there's even.
Exactly. There's even more we can do. And this is part of the reason I wanted the meeting on the 14th, is so that when we got the master plan and we know what the possibilities are, then what the board needs to assist the most with, in my opinion, is, and Carrie's got his hand up too,
No, it's her hand.
That's her.
Oh, okay, no, Carrie's not. And what we need to assist the most is what do we believe is the best way forward? And Jim Laster I think would probably, he had asked me about when we can have a visioning session. And that is something I think we need to do as soon as we can, after the master plan and the minimum standards are all in place and we finally know what we really have to work with. So that's kind of where I'm going and why I wanted everybody to have all that background last month.
Clancy, I did kind of have my hand up. So it's funny that you said that. And I guess it's just
Okay.
more, this is not a question, but more of a comment to Melissa for something maybe for you to think about. Like, I think I've heard Ron say this before about, our airport, because of the size and what we do out there, it cannot be self-sufficient. But what I'd be curious, Melissa, is there anything that we can do as an airport advisory board to help the airport become not completely self-sufficient, but more self-sufficient? Not saying that you have to answer that today, but I think that's something we as the airport advisory board should be thinking about and should be helping you out with and coming up with ways that we can.
That's why I think we need to do this whole visioning thing and sit down and say, okay, where do we want the airport to go? As I said on the 14th, do we want it more GA oriented, or do we want it more commercially oriented? Or is there something in between that we really want to do? And how does that affect bringing more self-sufficiency to the airport? So we know what the kitchen sink is on the master plan. What we don't know is what part of the kitchen sink we want. So, okay, I'm done.
Don't we have an FBO report?
We have an FBO report finally, right?
Yeah. I don't have anything to share unless you have tried to.
How much fuel did you want?
Just last weekend?
Oh, whenever, last month, how much did you pump?
I can get you that. Yeah, but I can get you that.
Just out of
I
curiosity.
gotta say, the weekend, apparently, they said, boy, we sold a lot of fuel, I think on
Did
Saturday.
you?
I said, well, how's that relate?
You sold it all to carry.
I was like, I definitely bought some fuel this week. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm flipping the problem.
It was just a lot of little ones that what
Yeah,
kept them busy, kept them hopping.
and I guess we are finally ready for public comment.
I have a
Sure.
question. Maybe you guys have addressed this and I just don't know because I'm new to all this stuff.
That's okay, that's why you're
Yes.
here.
Has anybody ever brought up the retention ponds that are part of the solar project that's within 4 or 5 miles of the airport, and the fact that due to the water level, they may have standing water in them, which could attract wildfowl?
Well, we do have the wildfowl problem always at the airport with birds and stuff.
Mhm.
And we do have the wildlife fence, but I don't know that I have heard any question brought up about the pond. Have you?
I don't believe, Commissioner Dorsey, that anybody from planning staff has brought that to this board, but I don't know that this board has any jurisdiction over that matter. We did ship everything related to the solar farm development to our FAA Central Region planning staff. And we received minimal comment back.
Well, I know they commented on the height
Yes,
of the stanchions. or
yes.
Whatever, but I didn't know if they specifically addressed the ponds, or if that's even a concern.
Sandy has some answers there. Yeah.
So review on the height of the structure would have been part of that airport overlay district because that extends so far out from the airport. As far as drainage goes and ponds, those tend to be project specific. Certainly, we know that there are elements to be considered with any future development on the airport. And that would be part of a specific study or project. And whether or not the city looks at doing some kind of a regional stormwater detention. I do know that the stormwater for and I'm not the planner that worked on that, Mary Miller's another planner in our office. The stormwater plan, as I understand that project, was specific to that project because the regular standards in the county would not have addressed a project of that scope, which is why the condition was set the way it was for that project. So it could be project specific.
Somebody told me that within 5 miles of the airport or something, they don't want geese flying around or whatever.
Sarah?
Well, I have a comment as a pilot. I've seen more like gulls and other birds at Topeka Villard than around our airport. I mean, we have some birds, but I see them more routinely over there. So
Well, we
I
have
haven't
bigger
noticed it as
wetlands
a
out
problem.
south, which probably attracts a lot more
Yeah.
groups than the airport.
I've been at a lot of other airports that are more birdy than ours, so.
Thank you.
Okay, does that help at all?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Mike.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm just curious, you've made a comment, and the board has made comment about increasing revenue at the airport and that you're gonna have internal discussions. Will you be opening that up to tenants at the airport, or people at the
Absolutely.
airport? So we can
Absolutely,
come forth with our plans?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we have open meetings, so, you know, when we're talking about that, it'll be noticed appropriately, at least usually a week in advance.
I just feel there's a lot of potential
Oh, there's a lot.
for revenue generation.
Well, what we're trying to do is get it to the point that we've got a level playing field for everybody and everybody's on the same sheet of music, and we aren't quite there yet. But it's, I think,
Well, isn't it true that if you accept funds from the federal government, you have to make it a level playing field?
that is exactly what's going on right now.
I mean, from what I understand, or you could possibly, the city could possibly have to return all those funds.
I don't know about that.
They
I
count
don't know
for
about
all the funds that they have. It is true, isn't it?
Yeah, it's true.
If you want to close the airport, you have to
Yeah.
give them money back.
That's you, yes.
Yeah.
Well, you can't necessarily say, do we want it to be a more general aviation airport or a more commercial
No, all
airport?
I'm saying about
Because
that, all I'm saying about
Queenstown
that is, how
Kind
do
of
we focus our fundraising
everybody
requests
else.
of the city? I'm not trying to exclude anybody. What I'm trying to figure out is, how do we prioritize what we're asking the city to do for the airport? I mean, we've had, for example, in the 2012 master plan, we had build new T hangars. It hasn't happened yet. So we would, if we'd had the money and if the strategic planning had been in place, we might have had revenue from.
Well, I can guarantee that Eurotech, as the largest employer out at the airport, brings in revenue not only to the airport, but to the city of Lawrence. Not only do we have employees that move here from different countries and all over the
I
United
accounted
States.
for that when I did the argument to the city 2023 to keep the aviation as a board instead of one person.
Yeah,
And
and
buses
we have
and like
clients
this.
flying in from all over the world, staying in our
I
hotels, eating
accommodated,
in our restaurants.
I know that.
I would recommend we don't evict them and push them off the airport.
Oh, come on, I'm not saying that at all.
This is
I'm
the
trying to
city
figure
on
out-
the airport.
But it's not what we're helping.
This is not what I'm talking about. I'm not pushing anybody off. I'm trying to figure out how to get more people on the air
And stay on there.
and stay on the air. But we gotta have an appropriate strategy to do that.
But you need to sell the argument too, because there's so many people move to
Exactly.
town, so many people come to town, go to games, whatever, the business jets, whatnot. And
Absolutely.
spend money.
Well, and our ramp is jam packed on game
Yeah.
days.
And that ramp is funded by the federal government and the city. They should be collecting funds. And it should be going back into the pot.
Who should be collecting
The
this?
city.
The city collects property taxes.
No, she's
Talking about ramp.
The airport.
Real money.
Well, the city does collect funds from the airport. And the funds from the airport are collected by the city in forms of rent, in forms of fuel flowage fees, et cetera. You know, for example, I'm gonna take the ramp question of issue. That's part of the Hetrick lease. Hetrick pays a
It's
monthly
not part
fee
of
for
the
that
Hetrick
lease.
No, it's not, Ron. It's not.
Okay. Well, then I've been misinformed.
It's a federally
Wait a
public
minute,
grant.
wait a minute, one person at a time, number one. And number two, the availability of raising funds at the airport and organizing it so that we can do that is currently in progress. That's what we're trying very hard to do. So I understand what you're saying. I'm not pushing anybody off the airport. I don't want anybody off the airport. I want most of the people here there. But we have to do it in an organized way. And that's what we're doing with the compliance that we have to do currently with the feds and the the minimum standards. And even the city is looking at additional revenue that we can bring in from on the airport property itself.
And let me just clarify, this is an advisory board, so, the jurisdiction that they have versus what the city has.
And it's
is very,
advice.
yeah, advice, unfortunately,
You don't
so,
have much power.
right,
But you do listen to us.
but yeah, which that's, and I advocate as well that we have this group of folks, everybody that's sitting here who provides us that advice, because I'm never gonna be a pilot and I'm never gonna be flying. I fly commercially, but I'll never do it at the level that you all do on the investments that all of you have.
They spent their entire lives.
Yeah, and so that's where this is so important, and it's so important we all get along. So I
Exactly.
think that's the aim that I have here is one, amping up sharing with you all, and then next addressing things that have got us where we're not happy.
If
Well, as an employer,
if I could get the airport self-sufficient, I would do it in a minute.
I have, okay, so all I'll say is that as an employer of over 20 employees, this is a very personal issue. I want to keep my employees in Lawrence and working.
When I made the argument to the city to keep the aviation board, I incorporated every bit of Eurotech's finances. Yeah, I got it in the slides. If you want to see it,
I
I
appreciate it.
am perfectly aware of what Eurotech provides at the airport, and I'm glad you're there.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you stay.
I do too.
Okay,
I do too.
You're here.
I'll do everything that I can to advise the city to do that. Okay, what else do we have? Let's get past this.
Public comments, but,
Then, public comment, and Mr. Wagner, do you have anything you'd like to pass along?
Yes, I do. I did tell Lloyd today, and it's kind of part of our bigger budget discussion. The city is facing a $6.6 million budget hole. They offered an early retirement incentive to eligible employees, and I have taken advantage of that. So this will be my last aviation board meeting. I certainly enjoy being airport manager and enjoyed working with all the airport tenants, and we've had a great board the past few years. So I will miss this work, but I think that lots of good things are happening, and we'll continue that. So my last day with the city will be June 20th.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, that's a good, not good scenario. Good for you, Scott, I guess. Bad for the airport. Sorry to hear that.
Fix the $6 million hole.
you should see what he was getting paid.
Hey, Melissa, there's some of your budget savings. Now you get to do all that work.
Yeah, that's right, and we're counting for it as we stand.
Okay. On that sad note, all other things being equal, could I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Bill?
All right, that's all you need.
I'll second.
Meetings.
Need a motion today.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Bye,
Bye, everybody.
Vacation, Ron.
Bye, Gary.